Okay, so if you view this channel a lot, you'll be familiar with this system. That's the ThinkCenter S51, which I'm using as a file server, sort of. I also use it for burning ISO files and stuff. Anyway, if you're wanting to set up a file server, but don't want to spend the money on an actual server because a server is ridiculously expensive, at least a new one, and even used ones are expensive. Get one of these old ThinkCenters. Don't get one of the new ones. Get one of these. They have two fans at the front for redundancy. If one fails, the other one will speed up. And I have a whole video explaining why this is the perfect machine for being a file server that is not a file server. Anyway, I have a lot of stuff on this machine. Can you see that? I have a lot of stuff on this machine. These are all drivers and ISO files and various other stuff, as well as a bunch of folders of pictures, and of course a bunch of videos as well. And this machine, that is not what I wanted to go to. This machine currently is running a 250 gig hard drive, which, if you can see that, is about full. Blue is the used, pink is the free. You can see I've got 214 gigs used and only 17 gigs free. So what I'm going to be doing today is, instead of waiting till it fills up, and I'm trying to do something important, and then it'll just say, hey, your drive's full, you can't do this. Because this machine, you know, I use as a file server so that I can access my stuff that's on there from this machine. I can access it on this machine. Any machine that I have connected to the internet in this house, I can access the stuff on here with. It's a lot easier than having different stuff on different machines, because used to I'd be working on a laptop in the other side of the house, and I would need a file off of my main machine right here. So I'd plug a flash drive into it, copy that one file, take it in there and put it on that laptop, and then I need something else and I'd come back. Well, using the server, I can just click on network places and go right to the server and get it right off of there without having to move and copy files and stuff. So I'm going to be upgrading this drive to a 500 gigabyte hard drive. Now I have a 1 terabyte hard drive that I was going to put in there, which is obviously would be two of these. A terabyte is 1,000 gigabytes, which is this drive here. That's what I was originally going to put in there. However, about every other week, I run a backup. I clone the drive out of this machine. Operating system, the whole drive, I just clone it onto this drive here and save that as a backup. And this is only 500 gigabytes, I believe. Yeah. So I can't go over a 500 gig drive, or else I wouldn't be able to run that backup. Anyway, so I'm going to be putting this, cloning the drive out of there onto this guy, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. We're going to go over the process. Even though this is not a tutorial video, it could be helpful if you're trying to change the hard drive in your system for a bigger one, or maybe you're upgrading to a solid state drive. This will show you the tools you need to copy your stuff from one hard drive to another without having to reinstall everything. And it'll also show you how to change the size of the partition so that your computer will say, hey, this is a 500 gig drive, and continue to write stuff to it, whereas the partition will be 250 gigs if we don't change it, even though it's on a 500 gig drive. So we'll be doing that when I return. Okay, I'm going to turn this fan off. It's aggravating. So the first thing I'm going to do is shut down the PC, and we're going to open it up. and we're going to plug in our new hard drive. But you are not going to remove the old hard drive. That's important. So I'm just going to move this stuff out of the way because I have to move the stuff off the top of this machine. There we go. Just put the keyboard down there. Now this machine, we're lucky, has 2 SATA ports. Most machines these days will have multiple SATA ports. So we're going to open up the machine, and I've got the extra fan here. The hard drive that's currently in here, if I can get this thing to open, there we go. SATA cable's kind of short. It's a Seagate, and the hard drive is in this blue thing right here. Now I've just noticed something else that is not, that I don't like. I'm going to show that right now. This machine, when I put it in use about a year ago, had absolutely 0 bad capacitors on it. I made sure about that. But since that time it's developed a few, it appears. Here's one here. While it's not very bad, you can see that the top of this capacitor is kind of domed. It should be flat like these other ones. So there's one there, and then there's one there, which is actually starting to leak, and then there's 2 behind it. Now luckily enough, it seems like they gave us a lot of room underneath them, and I can pull the board out and resolder them. And that's definitely something we're going to want to do at some point, because, well, those are bad, and failing components, I would like to fix it before it breaks. Because if I continue to run it until it just dies, chances are it's going to get a lot worse and harder to fix than it would just fixing it before it fails. Anyway, that's not the purpose of today's video, and we're not going to worry too much about that right now. This machine has 2 SATA ports on it, like I mentioned. They're right here, right next to each other, and your hard drive is going to be plugged into one. And generally on this machine, the other one is not going to be used because the disk drive, the optical drive, is normally IDE, which, I don't have one right now. But I changed it out for a SATA one because it wasn't working and I had a SATA one free. So what we would normally do is just plug our new hard drive into that extra SATA port, but since the disk drive is being used, we're going to unplug the disk drive, and we're going to plug this new hard drive into the SATA ports. Same ones that were connected there. I'm just going to kind of set that like that. Sure. Just so we can see the screen here. And what we're going to do is we're now going to power back on the machine. You can close it up if you want to. It doesn't really matter. We're going to power on the machine. This thing takes a while to boot. Oh, it's not. It takes a while to get past the post screen when the SATA CD drive is plugged in. It's just saying configuration error. Notice we have F2 to continue, just because it's noticing that, hey, instead of a CD drive here, I now have a hard drive. We're just going to ignore that. And what we are going to do, well, your hardware is installed, but not, yeah, I'm not going to worry about that too much. Come on. Okay, we gotta restart it because It just recognized that the hard drive's in there and installed it, but it has to restart, so great. This is where somebody who really gave a shit would cut this part out of the video. But I am not that person. And if you don't want to watch the computer boot up for the first time or the second time, well, you can certainly skip this if you want to. I'm willing to take a bet that my computer from 2005 here still starts up a lot quicker than about half of your brand new computers with Windows 10 on them that are supposedly better. Now, if you have an SSD or whatever, of course it's not going to. But if you've got a standard hard drive and you've got Windows 10 or a modern operating system, I'm willing to bet that this ThinkCenter from 2005 starts up a lot quicker. Might even run faster. Okay, so there's two tools or applications or whatever you want to call them that you're going to need installed for this. Well, you only need one if you're putting in a same size hard drive, like if you're upgrading to an SSD or something and you've got a 500 gig drive and you're putting another 500 gig drive in. The only application you are going to need is that Macrium Reflect. But if you're, and obviously an extra SATA cable to hook that up if you're not have a disk drive. That's SATA. Anyway, other than that, if you're putting in a different drive, you're going to need this mini tool Partition Manager. Both of these are free and can be downloaded off the internet. Full versions, not trial versions. I don't deal with free trials. If you can download the free version, that's fine. If it's not a free version of the software and there isn't a free version out there, pirate the software, you know, get a pirated version. There's basically a pirated version of everything online. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a program called Crystal Disk Info. You don't need this, but I'm just using it to show that both of the drives are recognized. Did it? Oh. And that doesn't... Yeah, there it goes. I found an older version. Crystal Disk Info is not compatible with Windows XP. Anyway, here's our 250 gig drive we're removing. And here's the new one we're putting in. It's caution. As far as the health status is caution. However, if we look, the health status caution is just under relocated sectors count. I'm not too concerned about that. Now, if the temperature were up there and it were worse than that, I'm not too concerned. This hard drive has only been turned on 105 times, although it does have 46,000 hours. Now, the advertised lifespan of a hard drive, or generally, is around 60,000 hours, although I've seen them well over that are still working. And since I run a backup every week, I'm not concerned about that. And, you know, if it fails, I'll just put another one in. I can basically just clone it right back off of this guy. Anyway, but if you're, obviously if you buy a new drive, it shouldn't say caution if you buy a new drive. But like I said, we don't need that tool. It's just showing 500 gig drive is recognized, and it is drive letter C and D, and then our drive that we're running off of now is drive E. Okay, and it's recognized in here too, C and D. So here's what we're going to do now. We're going to open our Macrium Reflect, which is the program that is going to clone the hard drive in this computer onto this new hard drive, which is basically, it's going to copy everything on there and it's going to look exactly the same. And you can see here the red line, it's almost full. So all we're going to have to do is hit clone this disk. Well, first off, if I click on this, this is our other one, our 500 gig drive. And I would like to, can I delete these? It'll delete it anyway. Okay, so we're going to go to this one, we're going to hit clone this drive, select a disk to clone to, and select that drive. And I'm going to hit delete existing partitions, and you want to make sure it's checked. And then hit finish. We want to run this backup now, but I do not want to save it as a scheduled backup. So we're going to hit OK. Target data will be overwritten, which means if anything's on the new drive, not the drive you're cloning, but the drive you're cloning to, if there's anything on there that you want to save, you want to get it off of there because this is going to erase it. So we're going to check that, and we're going to hit continue. And this is going to take quite some time. Like, depending on how much information you have, it can take an hour to... I've seen it take up to 5 hours. Not on this computer. It won't take that long. I don't have that much. But I've seen it take that long when you're cloning something that's like, you know, a couple terabytes of information. But this should take about an hour. And yes, I am going to cut the video. I am not going to record the whole hour of copying files. That'd be impossible. My camera battery lasts about 45 minutes. It's very, very old and needs to be replaced. And I only have one of them. Okay, so I'm going to cut the video here, and when it's done with this, I'm going to return. Okay, so as many of you may know, computers are weird. They do weird things that you don't always know why they're doing it. And one of the many good things about having multiple computers is that when one isn't doing what you want it to do, set it aside and pull out another one. So obviously that's the ThinkCenter S51 that is the file server. And for some reason, when I'm cloning its drive using the same tool to this USB drive as a backup, it does it just fine. But when I'm trying to clone it to that other drive, it didn't want to do it. So I took another one off the stack over here, another machine, which is a, God, what is that, an M71, I think? Anyway, I got these, I just plugged the two hard drives into it. That's the one that we're cloning off of onto that one. I got it plugged in with an external power supply because there's only two SATA connectors on there. And obviously one's hooked up to there. So now it's copying. You can see we're already at 3%. It was just hanging at 0 and then kept giving me an error. So we're copying it using the same program, Macrium Reflect, although this is a newer version. It's the same program. Actually, I think the latest version is still compatible with Windows XP, which is on there. I just haven't had it needed to upgrade it because it's copying hard drives. That's what it's designed to do, and it's doing it just fine. But anyway, yeah, we're copying it. We just did the same thing. I just selected. Obviously, this is the drive we're running off of. The drive you're running off of will always have a little Windows logo next to it, and that's the one you're currently running on. And then this is the 500 gig we're copying to. This is the one we're copying off of. You can see it's full and in the red. So it is now copying, and then we will continue from there. Okay, so the clone is completed. Took a little bit under an hour. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut down this machine. And okay, here's a good visual representation actually of what I am going to do next. So if you look, this is the drive we cloned, this 250 gig drive. This is the drive we cloned to, the 465, which is a 500 gig. You can see that one's all the way full, and this one has the small partition in there, which is 232 gigs, the same size as that drive, and then we have 232 extra gigs of free space. So we have to expand this partition over to the rest of that. So that's what we're going to do next. But for now, we need to shut down this machine and unplug the drives. Unplug this external power supply I was using to power this drive too. Yeah, sure. Now I'll go ahead and hook our disk drive back up and get this PC out of the way. Okay. And we'll get our... Ugh, this is a lot heavier too, even though it's smaller. Get this machine back up here. Now we can reconnect our other hard drive. Now what I'm going to do is we got to put our new drive in, the 500 gig drive. So I'm going to pull it out of this adapter thing and what do you call this, hard drive caddy. So I'm going to set our smaller 250 gig drive aside. This just has these little pins which line up in the holes where screws can go. And you've got to kind of bend it and get it in there. Kind of an interesting design. Now we're going to install this drive right into here where our old one was. I'm just going to plug it right back in the same way. We're going to hook everything up the same as it was before we started this whole procedure. Yeah, where'd my SATA cable for the hard drive go? Here it is. Oh, this SATA cable, actually let me get this out of the way. We're putting a longer SATA cable because that one's too short. And this one has these little clippy things so that it doesn't go popping off again. Okay. Make sure this fan here is sitting right there. Okay. We're just going to plug this machine back in. And what you should find is that it's going to boot up and run exactly the same as it did with the old drive in it. While that's booting up, I'll put the cover back on this other thing center here. You'll see, I don't know why it does this, but with the disk drive installed, it always takes a long time to pass that post screen. And the drive's not bad, there's nothing wrong with it, it works just fine, it recognizes it just fine, it just takes a long time to finish post with that installed. It's kind of strange. There we go. Other than that, this machine boots up quite quickly. Okay, it is booting off of our new drive. appears that everything is still here. It's recognizing that we have a new hard drive. Not going to worry about that now. If we go to our files here, they should all be right where we left them. And they are. So everything's exactly the same as it was. However, we go into my computer and we look at the hard drive and go to Properties. It's still going to say that the hard drive is only 232 gigabytes, and it's still going to say that it's almost full. However, if we go into Crystal Disk Info once again, you don't need to have Crystal Disk Info for any of this, but I do recommend having it on your machine. It's a very good tool. If we go into there, and if it decides it's going to come up, there we go. We see that it does recognize it as a 500 gigabyte hard drive. Now the reason that is the partition that it's running on. Since we did a clone, we cloned that drive onto this one. It's still recognizing that partition is only 250 gigabytes. So that's when this mini tool partition wizard comes into play. So we're going to go ahead and open that. A new version. No, the version's just fine. It's working. So you can see here, there's our space that we're using, which is 92% used, and there's the unallocated or unused space. So what I have to do, see, how did I do this before? First thing, okay, yeah, white partition. No, I ain't worried about that. It's been a while since I've done this. I did it once when I upgraded from an 80 gig drive. Here we go. No. Partition management. Wizard. Migrate Os. Copy partition. What I want to do, move or resize. So I've clicked on this partition. This is the one we want to resize. And we move or resize. And you can see that we can now drag it all the way over there to take up the rest of the space. Hit OK. And now you can see that this has gone from 250 gigs and 91% used, or what was it, 93%? I don't remember. But now it only has 46% used. You can see the used space compared to all of that. So now what I'm going to do is hit Apply and hit Yes. The changes were applied successfully. So I'm going to quit the program and we are going to restart the computer. And we boot it back up. It should recognize that all of the changes were made, and it should be good to go for the 500 gigabytes. You know what I find weird about this system? You can kind of see it. See how the display is kind of rippling there? Like the edges there are kind of rippling? That's not the camera, that's happening in real life. That only happens on this computer. Any monitor you hook it up to does that, and it's only this computer. For some reason, the display output on this computer ripples like that, and it does it all the time, even when it's in Windows or whatever. It works just fine, but the display like that always ripples like that, and I don't know why. It's kind of strange. Look, see, the Windows is, the letters are doing it. It's strange. Ah, yes, it's going to want to do disk checking because it recognizes that it's now a completely different thing, and I'm going to skip it. I'll let it do it next time I boot it back up, but for the sake of the video, I'm skipping it. No, I didn't forget my... And now, if we go into my computer, and we go to the hard drive properties, we can see it's recognizing the whole 465. It's a 500 gig drive. And it is recognizing that we have 250 gigabytes of free space, and you can see that we have a lot more free space. So, operation completed successfully. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment if you have one. Goodbye.